Welcome to my channel, and I'm back with you once again with another video of Microsoft Flight Simulator. With the Sim Update 15 of the Microsoft Flight Simulator, the enhanced version of the default Airbus A320 Neo is now available by iniBuilds, which is also known as the V2 or the version 2 in the Microsoft Flight Simulator. And for this plane, I have been doing lots of videos. So far, I have uploaded 9 tutorials on my channel. This is going to be the 10th one, in which I will tell you how to perform an ILS approach and landing, and plus how to manage the descent. Before this, I have also made videos related to the MCDU, which is the multifunction control and display unit, how to make a flight plan and enter the flight plan in MCDU, and how to fly this plane on autopilot and take off. So if you're not really familiar with the procedures of this plane, I would recommend you to just go and watch those videos. I've given the link in the description. You can just follow it, and then you can come back to this video. Every time when I'm making a video, I always keep this thing in mind that the beginners will be watching it. So I will just try to keep things really basic and simple for all the viewers. This is going to be a short flight from Dubai to Qatar. I will be taking off from runway 30 left, and I will be landing at runway 34 right in Qatar. And I'm starting the video right now from the departure runway, because I just wanted to give you a briefing related to the arrival and approach. And it's a very short flight, so I just don't want to rush up the things. So I just want to take some time and at least give you the briefing related to arrival and approach, and tell you how to read the approach plate, and then proceed further from here. Now over here, I would just like to give you a disclaimer that this procedure is actually carried out once you are at the top of descent and the plane is cruising at the given altitude. But as I'm starting it right now, so I just wanted to give you a briefing over here. So first of all, in order to start your descent and to land the plane, you should be selecting the runway at which you will be landing. Right now, I have already selected a runway, so I'm just going to select it for you once again. So before you start the descent, you go to the flight plan, and then you go to this option, descent, and over here you have arrival. So first of all, you have to select the arrival, and then you select the approach. So right now you can see that different approaches are coming over here, and I will be landing at ILS 34 right. I will select it, and then I will go to this option, TOSN 1R. It is as per the flight plan made by SimBrief. And then if there is any VIA, you can select it, or otherwise you can even skip it. But it's good to have it, because these arrival procedures and approach procedures, they have got different constraints, so they will be in your MCDU, and the plane will be following it if you're flying in the manage mode. And this is the VIA, LAGBA, and just insert it. So now you have your approach and your arrival. Now you can see this is the arrival. Now arrival starts at this point, Tosna, that's why it's known as TOSN 1R or Tosna 1R. And then the top of descent will come, and the plane will start to descend. Different altitudes are coming. You can just look at them over here. Now, if with any altitude there's a star coming in the magenta color, it means that there is a constraint over here, but the plane will be able to follow this constraint. So what's this constraint? If you click this right soft key, you will see the constraint. So this is 11,000 and above. As you can see, altitude constraint is coming. There's no speed constraint over here. And plus this is the default speed limit coming. Below 10,000 feet, the speed should not be more than 250 knots. This is applicable while you are climbing, and plus you are descending. But these are the constraints. You can change them, but right now just leave it like this, because it is as per the flight plan. So over here the plane will be above 11,000, which will be at 13,200. And let's see if we have any speed constraint coming. No. But you can see all the altitude constraints are coming, but the speeds are coming over here. And this is the heading of the waypoint. Now at some point you will see this error coming, manual and flight plan discontinuity. So now, in order to explain this thing to you, I will just go to the arrival charts or star, and plus the approach plate, and then I will explain it to you over there. So now I'm in Navigraph, and this is star, which is standard terminal arrival, and as you can see, Tosna is the point from where the arrival will start. And at this point, your altitude should be 20,000 and above. And then at this point, you should be at flight level 180 or 18,000 feet, because there's a line above and below it. So if there's a line below, it means you should be at 20,000 and above. And if there's an line above it and below it, then it means you should be at 18,000. And then Afnan, 11,000 and above. And at this point, 7,000, 6,000 and above. And over here, between 3,500 and 2,500. So this is the detail of the constraints related to altitude, and plus the speeds are also coming 220 knots, and so on and so forth. Now over here you will see these two things coming, two circles with numbers 1 and 2. So what is 1 and what is 2? So if you are going to land at runway 34 right, you should be expecting 2,500 or 2,500 feet altitude. It is given to you by the ATC. So ATC actually instructs you. And over here it's saying that maintain 156 degrees track, expect vectors. So once you reach this point, the plane will actually go straight, and you will wait for the ATC to give you heading for this runway, and you will fly in this heading. So that's why there is a discontinuity in manual coming over here, because at this point you should be expecting vectors from the ATC. But as a beginner, you should be deleting them, and you can just carry out your approach like this. I will be making another video in which I will tell you how to fly this approach. But as a beginner, and up till now, what I do is this: I usually delete the discontinuity and just fly on the autopilot. Because after this point, your navigation will be disabled, and the plane will just keep on flying straight till the time you change the heading or you do something else, which I will just explain it to you. So this is something that you have to consider. So now going to the approach plate, you will see that I've selected category 2 and 3 ILS runway 34 right. The heading of the runway is 336 degrees. So after this point, you will just turn right, and then you will just come to this point, Legma, from where the approach will start. This is actually your initial approach fix, Legma. And then you have the final approach fix, which is HH911. The distance to these points is coming. So HH911 is 7.6 nautical miles away from the runway. And then this point, Lazzo, it's again 7.6 plus 3.2 nautical miles away. And Lagma is further away. So from here you will start the approach, and then you will land. Now when you are carrying out an ILS approach, it is actually a precision approach in which ground-based navigation device is used to direct the plane to the runway. So this ground-based navigation device, which is also known as the localizer, it directs the plane to the runway, and it ensures that the plane is aligned with the runway. It's coming in a straight line. It's not left or right. And plus it follows this glide slope. So from this point, the plane will actually start to descend towards the runway at an angle of 3 degrees. And roughly, if you do it, it's like the descent rate of 300 plus minus, 20 or 30 feet per minute at this point. So at this point, the plane will start to descend towards the runway, and it will just touch the runway at the right point, and plus it will be properly aligned with the runway. So the heading is also coming 336 degrees. Now over here you will see the frequency of the localizer is coming, which says ILS DME. It's actually Instrument Landing System Distance Measuring Equipment. Whenever you see a DME with any ground-based navigation device, it means it also tells you the distance. So at your primary flight display, at this point, you will start to see the distance as soon as the plane picks up the ILS frequency, and it will tell you how far you are from the runway. This is the frequency, and plus this is the heading. So it's very simple, and the rest you can also explore things about this approach plate, but I'm just trying to keep things very simple and to the point. This is the frequency coming for the ATIS, from where you can get the weather information, as I will not be using radio communication, so this frequency will not be used. Then you have Doha radar for approach, and You have Doha approach east, this is north, this is south, and so on and so forth. I will not be using any of these frequencies for this flight. Then again, the localizer frequency or the ILS frequency is coming, which is same. This is the final approach course, and then this is the final approach fix. And it's saying that category 3 and category 2 ILS refer to minimums. Now, what is minimums? Minimums is actually an altitude at which the pilots actually look at the runway and they see that the plane is properly aligned with the runway, or either they can see the runway or not. So let's say if you're landing in a very low visibility weather and the visibility is really low, but your category 3, if you're performing, let's say, a category 3 ILS approach, the plane will actually come to the runway, but still the pilot has to see whether the autopilot has done its job correctly or not. So at this altitude, you will hear minimums. If the pilots cannot see the runway, then they can go for a go around, or they can just call it a missed approach, or they can just go to another airport. So that's why this altitude, you have to make sure that you can see the runway, and plus the plane is properly aligned with the runway. So that's why this altitude is coming. Now category 3 is the highest level of precision. Then you have category 2 and category 1. So that's why the altitude is coming as 100, or rather the height. Now, if you look at this part of the approach plate, you will see category 2 ILS is coming. And this is RA, which is radio 100, but I will just bring your attention to this point, DAH. This is decision altitude and decision height. So decision altitude is 113 feet, whereas decision height is 100 feet. Now, if you look at this part of the approach plate, you will see the runway elevation is coming from the sea level, which is 13 feet. So it's like 100 feet as given over here. But what's the difference in decision height and decision altitude? Decision altitude is actually based on barometric pressure, and decision height is actually based on the radio signals transmitted by the plane to the ground in order to see how high the plane is. So that's why it's 100, but for the barometric pressure, it's adding the 13 from the sea level to it. So we will be using decision altitude because it's more precise than the decision height thing, because if you are measuring your height using the radio signals, then the ground has to be really even. So if the ground is not even, then you will not have right readings. So that's why it's preferred to use 113. So this is what we will be using for the minimums. And that's it. So this approach plate is really simple to read, and it's very easy. One more thing, and the last thing, is the transition altitude. During the descent at this altitude at 13,000 feet, we will be changing the barometric pressure or setting the altimeter for the landing. Now coming back to the plane, what I'll do is this. I will just clear this manual and then flight plan discontinuity. Remember to do it in this sequence. First you have to delete manual and then discontinuity. Now I'm going to take this plane up in there, and then once I will start the descent, then I will take you from there. Now the plane is at top of climb, and it's a very short distance to top of descent, and this is the point from where I will start the descent. As you can see, this white arrow is coming and it shows a down arrow, so you have to start your descent from this point. So once at the cruising altitude, you have to configure the MCDU. So let's start configuring the MCDU. As I told you before in this video, that we have to start with the flight plan and that you have to select the arrival and the approach. This is what we have done. Another thing which I would just like to tell you, that there was another point that we selected via, and why we selected via. I'll just tell you right now. If you look at the approach plate, you will see that the arrival procedure is actually finishing over here at this point, MUXCD. And then afterwards, you will be going for the approach and then the final approach. So this is actually the initial approach fix, lagma. So this is the point where actually approach starts and the arrival ends. So that's why it's known as via, or they also call it the transition point. So that's why you have to select via. So every time if you have to select a via in a flight plan and you're selecting the approach, just look for the initial approach fix in the approach plate, and then you will get the via. So now you have selected the approach and arrival. Then you have to select the ILS frequency. It's automatically picked up, but I don't know, with this plane it's not getting picked up automatically. So what you have to do is this: first you have to enter the ILS frequency and then the course. So just press slash 110.1. This is the ILS frequency. Just click this button and it will be picked up, and then the course is 336. Again, now check destination data. This error is coming, so this is what I'm going to enter right now. So let's go to this option performance and keep on pressing the next phase, and over here you will see the approach page. So in this page you have to enter the barometer pressure, the temperature and the wind. You can get it from here, the electronic flight bag. So this is a good view. So the QNH is 1002. So let's enter it over here. Press this button, QNH will be updated. Then the temperature is 32. As you can see, it's coming over here. 32. And then the wind. It's 360 degrees, 05 knots. So 360/05. And that's it. Transition altitude, as I've shown you before. In the approach plate, it's 13,000 feet. So this is the altitude at which you have to change the barometer pressure from standard to the given one, which is 1002. And then you see these two readings, baro and radio. So as I've told you before, that minimums have to be entered over here in the MCDU. So this is going to be 113, 100 feet above the runway, which automatically adds the 13 feet elevation of the runway from the sea level. And that's it. So now you have the approach, you have the ILS frequency, and you have the performance information for the landing. Now if you look at this page, you will see the top of descent is coming. And the estimated fuel on board on destination will be 2.8 tons, 2,800 kilograms, and that's it. Now there is another thing that we have to decide, that to which altitude we will be descending. We can descend to any altitude, but obviously we have to not only take care of the constraint, but we have to make sure that we are at the right altitude in order to intercept the glide slope. So as per the approach plate, at this point Legma, your altitude should be 2,500 in order to intercept the glide slope at the right point. And once you come over here, then you will be properly aligned with the localizer, and there will be proper glide slope following. So the plane will be able to follow it. If at this point you're coming at a very high altitude, obviously you will not end up landing on the runway. Or maybe if you're at a lower altitude, at a certain point, maybe at this point, you will intercept the glide slope. So it's better to be at 2,500, but if you're above it, then it's a problem. Maybe if you're at 2,000, even at some point you will intercept the glide slope. But it's better to be at 2,500. So over here in the altitude, I will set 2,500. And once this point is near, then I will just bring my cursor over here, and once I see the up arrow, I will press it, because then the plane will descend in the manage mode. And once the plane is descending in the manage mode, it will continue to descend to 2,500, but it will also follow these constraints. Now, interestingly, for this flight, there are many constraints, but there is no constraint below. Only for the last point, you have below 3,500 and above 2,500. So we will see whether the plane will actually follow that or not. But at this point, you can see speed is coming. You have to slow down at this point. But the manage speed mode will actually do it, because I'm not descending using the selected mode. And especially for the altitude, I'm also using the manage mode. Now, if you haven't seen the autopilot video, I would just like to tell you that this plane has got two modes, the managed and the selected. If you bring your cursor over here and you see the up arrow, you press this button, this knob will be pushed in, and the plane will actually descend in the managed mode. And if you see this cursor, when it's down arrow, then it will actually pull out the knob and the plane will actually descend in the selected mode or the open descent mode. Now in the open descent, there are chances that the plane will not follow any constraint. Obviously, it will just straight away descend to 2,500, and maybe at this point the plane goes below 7,000 feet. So that's why it's always good to descend in the managed mode. And if you want to do it yourself, you can do it, but you have to practice it a lot in order to have a good descent management of this plane. Because eventually at the given point, at the initial approach fix, you should be at 2,500 feet. In order to intercept the glide slope, your speed should be in control, maybe roughly 220 or 180 knots, and then you can activate the approach phase, and then you can just go through the final approach fix and then land the plane. So right now you can see that the top of descent is roughly 20 nautical miles away. So I will be just prepared and I will press this button to start the descent. Now we are almost there. So let's reduce the altitude and keep it at 2,500. If I press this knob, you will see it will move to 100. Now you can change the units in 100. Initially they were changing in thousands. So I will just keep it over here like this. Even I can start the descent right now, but we'll just wait for this point to come near, and then I will just bring my cursor over here. As soon as I see the up arrow, I'll press it, and then the plane will descend in the managed mode. Now let's zoom in and see. So maybe once it crosses this 5 nautical mile circle, then I will start the descent, because it will take some time to start the descent, because the thrust will go idle and then the plane will descend. Obviously it will not keep on descending with the same thrust rate, because then the speed will increase. So that's why the thrust has to be reduced in order to manage the speed. So let's press it, and now you can see descent started to come, and it shows that it's in the managed descent. Now there are a few things that you have to look at. Is this that you have set the altitude to 2,500, but over here flight level 200 is coming, which means there is a constraint in magenta color. So that's why the plane is going to follow this constraint, and you can see alt is also coming in magenta color. So it means that it's going to follow this constraint. Now this is the speed, the managed speed as per the autopilot, and this is the upper limit and the lower limit. So during the descent, the speed goes up to this point and down to this point, but doesn't increase the limits, and just remain within the limit, so that it's following the speed calculations also. Right now on the primary flight display, you will see this green dot coming. This is basically your vertical deviation, that how much deviated you are from the vertical path or the descent path. So if this circle, green circle, is above, it means you are below the descent path, and if it goes down, then it means you are above the descent path. If you are below it, then it's okay, but if you are above it, it means you really have to increase your descent rate in order to follow the descent path. Now you can see this green dot is in the middle, so it means the plane is actually following the descent path, and it will actually keep on following all the constraints. So if I go to the flight plan, you will see all magenta stars are coming. So it means that wherever there is a constraint for the altitude, the plane will actually follow it, and it will not miss any constraint, as you can see. So it's good. If there was an issue, then it will come in the amber color. So let's keep this performance page active, and as soon as I'm near the runway, I will press this button, activate approach phase, and the approach phase will start. Now there is one more thing I would just like to bring your attention to. On the approach page, you will see 3 speeds coming: O, S and F. This is the green dot speed or the clean speed, 215 knots. At this speed or more than this speed, you can fly without the slats and the flaps. But at this speed, 190 knots, you have to extend the flaps, and after this speed, you have to have full flaps. And once you're taking off, it goes reverse. After 146 knots, you can retract the flaps, and then 190, you can retract the slats, and then 214 is the clean speed, or the green dot speed at which you can just fly without the flap. So once you're going for the landing, it reverses, but the rule remains the same. Plus, these are also the speeds coming for flaps and slats. So you can also consult this. By 200 knots, you can have flaps at setting 2, and then 185 knots 3, and then full after 177 knots. Otherwise, you will hear the overspeed error. So before the landing, you also have to do some more preparations, and you have to arm the ground spoilers for the landing. So just bring your cursor over here and just pull it up. That's it. And then you get the brakes. You can set them to low, or you can set them to medium. As the runway is really long, so I can use low brakes, or I can also use medium brakes. What I can do is this. I can go to the sim brief and tell you how to get the landing performance. Now in sim brief, you can see this is the flight plan, and if I go to the performance and tools, I can populate from the last flight, and then I can just go to the landing performance. You can see the plane is coming, the runway is coming, and flap settings, I will be landing with full flaps, and brake settings set to optimum, like whatever is possible. And then temperature, when everything is coming, I can calculate. And now it can tell me that how much brake is required. So auto low. So even I can land with low brakes and land. So now I'm just going to take you through all this. But before this, let's set the brakes. So now you set the brakes low. Why you select low brakes? Because you have got a very long runway and the plane is not carrying so much weight. So that's why you can take some runway to stop. Now once the plane will touch the runway, and there will be three forces which will come into action to stop the plane. One is the reverse thrust, another one is the ground spoiler, and third one is the brake. So as soon as you touch the runway, you will activate the reverse thrust. Actually, in Airbus, reverse thrust is activated by pulling the thrust levers all the way back to this point. You can see this is full reverse thrust, and in between these 2 points, it's idle reverse thrust, and then the power increases. Over here, half reverse thrust, and over here, full reverse thrust. I will be using full reverse thrust for the landing. Now, I'm using a Thrust Master TCA quadrant, and I've got the thrust lever, the same thrust lever on my controller. So once I will land, I will bring the thrust lever to idle, and then I will just, you have to pull up these knobs in order to activate the reverse thrust and take it all the way back. But there is another thing that you can do. I am also using the side stick by Airbus, Thrustmaster, Airbus side stick, and over here in the options, you will see, if I go to the throttle settings, you will see that reverse on axis. So on this side stick, I also have a throttle, and I've just kept it in such a way and that due to this setting, reverse on axis, that if I bring it all the way back, the reverse thrust is activated. So you can also do that, or you can go to the settings and for the controls, and you can assign a key to it. On my keyboard, I have assigned Control, Shift, and W. So once the plane lands, I press Control, Shift, and W, and the reverse thrust is active, and as soon as I press it again, it's deactivated. And then as soon as the reverse thrust is activated, the ground spoilers also come into action. I've made this video. I've used the built-in recorder for the Microsoft Flight Simulator. It hasn't shown you how the ground spoilers actually work. So these flaps actually get up as like the speed brakes. But in this video, you cannot see it. There is an issue in the Microsoft Flight Simulator default recorder. So I didn't want to record it again. So that's why I'm just putting the video like this. Kindly excuse me for that. But anyhow, the ground spoilers work. Then what you do is this. Once the speed reaches 80 knots roughly, you start to reduce the reverse thrust. Maybe you can just bring it over here to idle. And below 60 knots, you can deactivate it. So between 80 and 60 knots, you can deactivate the reverse thrust, and as soon as you deactivate the reverse thrust, you bring the thrust levers to idle. Then the brakes and the tires, they will come into action, and then they will stop the plane. So that's why you set it to low, because if you set it to medium, obviously it will be hard braking and the brake temperature will rise. How you see the brake temperature? If you go over here, you will see this option wheel. If you press this and the lower ECAM, you will see the brake temperature is coming. Right now it's 45 degrees centigrade. It can reach up to like 320, 340 degrees centigrade. And after the landing, you might even get an error that the brakes are hot, and you might not be able to do another flight till the time the brakes cool down. So for this, there is an option over here. You can see reset brake temperature. It says tap to reset. You press this button and the brake temperature resets. But this is not like, in reality, it's not done like this. The brake fans actually come into action, to cool down the brakes. You don't even use brakes at the parking gate. You use the chocks and you let the brakes to cool down. And once the brakes cool down, then you go for another flight, and that's it. So I think so far I have covered all the topics related to the descent management, ILS approach and landing. Now you can see everything is going good. The advantage of using the manage mode in the Airbus, you don't really have to do anything, and the plane will actually follow all the constraints. And as now you can see, this amber color is coming around standard, so we have to change the altimeter. And then for the second one as well, and over here also. So if you see anything in amber color over here on the primary flight display or anywhere, you have to give attention to it. So now the thrust is in the idle position, although it's over here at the climb, but the thrust is getting reduced. The plane is actually following the descent profile, and you can see this arrow is coming, which is showing that by this point the plane will be at the given altitude of 7,000. Now as the plane is below 10,000 feet, I can turn on the lights, the wing lights, landing lights, and runway turn off lights. Now I'll just give you an example. I'll just go out and show you. You have the wing lights over here. Then these are the landing lights under the wing. If you look at from the back, they are actually the landing lights. They just extend out once you turn them on. And then you have light on the nose wheel, and that's it. So you have to turn on the lights so that, even in the morning you have to turn on the lights, because even if the planes at the distance, the other planes can see your plane clearly. Because if all the lights are off, maybe nobody can see the plane, or maybe sees a black dot. But these lights are so bright that the other planes from the distance can see your plane also, and plus it also will increase your visibility. Now another thing I just want to bring your attention to is this, that right now the speed is in the manage mode, and if I click over here, the speed now will go into the selected mode. Now let's take it back to the manage mode. So manage mode means that whatever the speed is given over here in the MCDU as per the flight plan, the autopilot will actually follow those speed constraints. Now you will see this option is coming over here in performance, and it says activate approach phase. So once I'm near the runway, I will press this button and the speed will automatically reduce. Now it will reduce to what? I will just show you. Now over here on this page, you have landing configuration for the flaps, configuration 3 and full. So you can land with the flaps 3 or full. Right now full is selected, but if I select 3, now the 3 is selected. And you can see this approach speed is coming 142, 131. So with full flaps you can land at a slower speed, but with 3 you can, you will land at slightly higher speed, 142. So flaps actually provide lift to the plane, and they also provide drag. So that's why with full flaps you get a good lift. So that's why you can land at a slower speed. So it's always advisable to land with full flaps, but if you want to do some adventure, then you can land with flaps 3. But remember this thing that if you're having full flaps, then more drag is created, which will consume more fuel. So that's why different airlines have got different standards. Maybe after in 5 landings, maybe 2 landings you can do with the full flap, or 3 landings you have to do with the 3 flaps. So depending upon the airline and its budget, these constraints are given to the pilots, but it's always advisable to land with the full flaps. Now the speed has reduced to 220 knots, and I can extend the flaps. You can see at this point the plane is slightly above the descent profile. What I can do is this: I can also activate the speed brakes, and you will see the descent rate will increase, and eventually the plane will follow this path. Yes, you can see the speed brakes in action on the spoilers. So now at this point the plane will be 3,500 feet. So I can just again deactivate the speed brakes and activate the ground spoilers. Now all the lights are on. Seatbelt signs turned on as soon as the plane was below 10,000 feet. Now this is the final turn. What I can do is this: at this point I can press this button LS, and the ILS frequency will start to appear over here, and you can see its frequency is coming 110.1, and it's 14.8 nautical miles away. Now there's going to be the last right turn, and afterwards I will be going for the approach and then the final approach. So what I can do is this: I can activate the approach phase as well. So let's press this button, performance, and you will see activate approach phase. It's coming. Now this part of the primary flight display shows you the indicators for the ILS. So this will show you the lateral alignment of the plane with the runway, that it's like on the center line, and plus this will actually indicate then how what is your altitude. Is it above the glide slope or below the glide slope? So right now I'm below the glide slope. So eventually at some point this indicator will come in the middle. But if this indicator was here down, it means I'm coming at a higher altitude. So I have to descend at a higher rate. So now let's activate the approach phase, and as soon as I will confirm it, you will see the speed will reduce, and it will just keep on reducing, and then subsequently you can get the flaps. Now you can see this diamond is started to come in the middle. What I can do is this: right now I can activate approach, and let the plane level off at 2,500, because I just want to show you the magic of this button approach. If you're new to the flight simulation, it's a very interesting button. So right now you can see the speed has started to reduce. Now I can also set the flaps to position 2. Now you can see the plane has leveled off at 2,500. Now at this point I will activate the approach button. So as soon as I press this button approach, you can see the plane is aligning itself with the runway. So this is the horizontal line. And as soon as this diamond will come in the middle, the plane will actually start to descend towards the runway at an angle of 3 degrees. Let's wait for it. Actually, the flaps didn't change because I changed them from here, but not from the controller. So that's why they were set to 1 plus F. Now it's reducing. And now I can set the flaps to 3. Now you can see the plane has automatically started to descend towards the runway. and it's 7 nautical miles away. I can also lower the gears. The gears will actually help in reducing the speed again. Another factor. And with the gears down, I can go with the full flaps, and now you will see the speed will reduce a lot. Now if you look at the flight mode enunciator, it shows you that it's following the glide slope, and it's going to be category 3 single. It's single because one autopilot is selected. If I press 2, you will see category 3 dual is coming, autopilot 1 plus 2. So now the plane will actually auto land. I really don't have to do anything. So if the plane just keeps on going like this, as soon as the plane is near the runway, I will just pitch up the nose, I think 30 feet above the runway. You just slightly pitch up the nose, and then you bring the thrust to idle, and then the plane touches the runway. As soon as the plane touches the runway, you will activate the reverse thrust. So that's how the autopilot lands. So if you look at the memo, landing gear down, signs on, cabin check, spoilers are on, and flaps are full. And the speed is now 131. And now the runway is 3.8 nautical miles away. So for the autopilot landing, I will be making another video, but for this video, I will deactivate the autopilot. Remember to deactivate the autopilot from the side stick in the plane. Don't use any controller, because if you deactivate it from your controller, you will keep on hearing an error. So just press this button and the autopilot will disengage with this beep, and now you can land. Remember this thing? I'm also going to try this thing over here. You see the center line? Just keep it over here in the middle, and you will be on the center line. So I'll just try to keep it like this, and let's go down, because you can see this timer is going down, so you just go down with it. Now you see these PAPI lights over here on the runway. If they're all white, it means you're coming at a higher altitude. So for a good landing, 2 should be red and 2 should be white. Now just pull up a bit, because this timer is now going up, so you will go down. So just adjust it like this. Now just go down. Got 3 lights are white, so it means this error is coming, because if you're not following the glide slope, then you will hear this error. So 100 feet above the runway. 30, just bring the thrust lever to idle, pitch up a bit, and now reverse thrust activated. And you can see now the reverse is coming over here on the upper E cam. Now you can see 80. I can slightly start to reduce the reverse thrust. 60. Reverse thrust deactivated. Now the brakes will come into action. Now you can see the speed is applying and speed is reducing. And now I can press the brakes, and the auto brakes will be deactivated, and now I have the control of the plane and everything. So that's how you manage the descent and bring the plane to the runway. After this, I will be making another video in which I will tell you what to do once you land the plane. And hopefully this was a useful video for you, and you would have learned many things from this video. But still, if you want to add anything to this video, the comment section is there for you. Or if you want to ask me any question, the comment section is there for you. Thank you very much for staying with me. Have a nice day. Hope to see you soon.